So, first of all, well done on completing this class. And this is a very short experience today because I felt like it's critical before you enter into this the next phase that you understand what we're trying to achieve in this class. What we're trying to achieve in this class is to move people. If you've noticed, we've moved people over the last 6 months through various stages. Number one, from not knowing Christ to knowing Christ. That's why baptism is important. From not knowing a church to having a church family. That's why church membership is important. From there, we developed spiritual maturity, which is what the equip class was for. And this class, the main aim of this class is to develop ministry or people in ministry. You understand what I'm saying, right? And using your gift for the sake of ministry and using your gifts for the betterment of the church. Okay? So I wanted to maybe tell you guys a bit about me and why ministry is important. Whenever somebody gets born again, have you ever realized that the very first thing that they want to do is get involved somehow? When somebody really gets born again, or gets involved into the church, one of the very first things they want to do is get involved in the church. You get what I mean, right? They want to help. They want to find they'll always say, I want to do anything, just not pastoring or preaching. So they want to immediately, and all of you, I've seen you all respond differently. At some point, you became in the church. At some point, you decided, I'm going to pursue this thing. I want to help in any way that I can. Why? Because each one of us, when we discover our true place in God, will then find that we were born to serve God. You understand? So that's why there's that thing inside of us that always wants to serve God. Okay? Because when you become born again, you find on the inside of you that, man, I was actually made to serve God. In fact, you probably doesn't make sense the way serving God makes sense. But here's the problem. Along the lines, you find that the most committed people in the church at first are those who become recent converts, okay? And somewhere along the way, you will encounter people. You get what I mean? So maybe your zeal to help will be bruised, or your ego, or somebody may affect you by what they say to you. Or you get what I'm saying, right? So you start serving, and that initial zeal you had may drop a bit. This is reality. I'm being honest with you. Okay? Maybe one day people don't appreciate you and what you've done the way they did at first. Okay? Let's say you baked scones, and suddenly that day, instead of everyone saying, those scones are wonderful, they even start giving suggestions, No, maybe let's try out chocolate. Let's try. And maybe your ego is hurt along the way. Okay? I want you to remember this moment. Okay? And remember that the reason why you wanted to serve God was not because of people, was because of, number one, your connection with God. Okay? Let that be your foundation. Let that be your foundation. I find that along the way, people lose track and forget why they started ministry. Okay? Ministry is incredible, but ministry is also equally confusing. And I want to tell you guys the truth. Okay? Because along the way, you can get caught up in the ideal of being in ministry and forget why you started in ministry. Okay? You can get caught up. Like if you are maybe a singer, you feel like, oh, if I'm not there, it won't happen the way it should, But you forget that the primary basis of ministry is your relationship with God. Your foundation must be your relationship with God. Because along the way, you will meet people. And unfortunately, the very same people that you want to help will injure you. Okay? the very same people that you want to help can affect you. Okay? How many of us realize that Moses wanted to deliver the children of Israel? Okay? And in wanting to deliver the children of Israel, he goes to the children of Israel and says, or let me put it this way. Instead of going straight to Pharaoh, he sees injustice in the camp of the Israelites, right? And Moses kills an Egyptian. We all know that story, right? And he was expecting applause from the Israelites to say, oh, he killed an Egyptian. And then the very same people he was trying to help then turn around and say to him, who made you Lord over us? After all, are you not the one who killed an Egyptian yesterday? You understand what I'm saying? So the people that you are trying to help will injure you. But you've got to remember this, that your ultimate role and responsibility is to serve God. When you serve God, what people do to you is inconsequential. When you serve people, what people do to you will affect you. Okay? Are we together? When you serve God, what people do to you is inconsequential. Because when God is behind your ministry and behind your motives, the insults of men won't stop you from moving on. Okay? And the truth is, every single one of us is affected. Guys, do you know that Moses was so hurt by what they said to him that he disappeared for 40 years? The guy was upset for 40 years. He disappeared for 40 years. Do you know how I know it still affected him? Because when God said, go back to the children of Israel, he still said, but who should I say sent me? Hello, you just met God. But still, he remembers, you know what always perplexes me about that story is that Moses assumed in his mind that the people who were there 40 years ago were still there today. Because what people say to you can affect you for a long time. What people do to you can affect you for a long time. But each one of us needs to have our burning bush. I know people don't realize that how much things can affect them for a long time, because how many of you remember like some kid in high school or primary school that bullied you or that tormented you? You still remember them, right? Not only do you still remember them, when you think of them, emotions come up. Am I lying? When you think of them, you still have emotions of anger or emotions of hurt, right? Why? Because very simply, human beings can store pain a lot easier than they can store joy. I don't know why that is. That's a true fact. When you have a joyful moment, it ends quickly. Okay? Let me give you an example. If you eat ice cream for the first time, it's an incredible taste. You know what I mean? But it ends. You know what I mean? You don't replay the taste over and over, right? But your very first injection, you replay it over and over and over. Because human beings have a tendency of storing pain more than they store joy. And we see the story of Moses, that what stopped Moses from moving forward for a long time in his ministry was just what one person said. He met one guy who was unappreciative, and he got afraid and he fled for 40 years. You've got to develop a thick skin in ministry, okay? Are we together? We've got to develop a thick skin. We've got to develop an attitude of, I came here for God and I'm here to help people. But along the way, if the people don't receive me, are you hearing me? If they don't receive me the way I expect, it's okay because God sent me. Okay? It's important that you understand that God sent you to people. Okay? So when God has sent you, whatever anybody says in between doesn't matter. Because I tell you the truth, people will bruise you, people will hurt you, people will affect you. And you have to be secure enough to be okay with what other people say. It's not easy. I mean, I'm sometimes I open myself up to a lot of people, you know, like young people, you guys. People can give me suggestions. I've got people who can tell me, okay, but pastor, sometimes, time, you know. And sometimes you want to tell them, Iwe, were you there when I was rolling on the floor asking God for a message? But you get what I'm saying. And sometimes you have to be secure enough to say, okay, what people think is what people think, you know. But I'll always stay connected to God and stay focused on what God wants me to do. So I want to tell you guys a bit about myself. I gave my life to the Lord for real. Because it was the first time then there was for real. Okay? So I gave my life to the Lord for real, 2010, June 25th, 2010. Mount Zion, Kablonga Boys on a Sunday. And from that point, I never looked back, okay? From that point, I decided that I was going to serve the Lord with all my heart, okay? Because naturally, I was a gifted person, okay? And I'm being honest with you. I was a gifted person. And what I mean by that is things come easy for me. I'm being honest. So I knew that all I needed to do was serve God. Because whatever I decided to learn, I have that capacity that if I put my mind to something, I will figure it out. If I start learning how to make watches, and I decide I like to make watches, I will make watches. I won't sleep until I figure out how to make a watch. Okay? So I decided to serve God, but very quickly I realized this. Serving God does not take away from your relationship with God. Okay? Serving God does not substitute your relationship with God. That's a better way of putting it. Okay? So many people want to come here or there or wherever it is and want to use their service as a substitute for their obedience. Are we together? Are you getting what I'm trying to say? So, we feel that because I am an usher, God must intervene in my life. Because I am in the praise team, God must intervene in my life. The primary place that God does things is in you, then through you. Okay? It is God who works in us both to will and to do according to his good plans or purposes. Okay? So the primary thing that you must protect is your relationship with God. Very quickly as I entered church, I found that just because I was in the team, just because I was in the music team, just because I was in the sound team, just because I was somewhere, it doesn't mean that I suddenly became obedient to Christ. Okay? I was still doing what I was doing out there. Okay? I was still messing around. I was still, you know, being found in wrong places, even though I had a genuine conviction that Christ is my Lord. Am I talking to somebody? Okay? I was still found in the wrong places, even though I had made a decision to serve God. And it reminds me of a story in the Bible where Saul is 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 talked to by Samuel for offering a sacrifice on behalf of the prophet. He disobeyed, and Samuel says something to Saul. He says, obedience, listen to me, obedience is better than what? Than sacrifice. Okay? God wants your obedience more than he wants your sacrifice. He wants your heart more than he desires your service. Okay? So how do we manage our heart with God? We manage our heart by checking our devotion with God. You understand what I'm saying? Our devotional life. How much time do you spend in prayer? Am I making sense to you? How much time do you spend in listening and seeking God for yourself? That is what will keep you. Not this. This is a benefit. You get what I'm saying? This is an addition. Okay? This is something that will be great for each one of us. But ultimately, we must realize that the first place of our calling is our relationship with God. We are first called to him before we are called to other people. Where's the young man? Ethan. Ethan. Bring him here if he wants to play. Come. Come. Ethan. You can hear me. It's good being a kid, man. Not being complex in any way. That's life, man. It's nice being a kid, man. So, I quickly found that I needed to maintain my devotional life. Because if I didn't maintain my devotional life, then there was no way that I could effectively minister to the people. Okay? So hear me when I say this. What will keep you is your devotion, not your service. Don't substitute your devotion for your service. Don't think that because I am serving in church, me and God are okay. Okay? I heard this wonderful story and teaching that really blessed me. God is the only one who can fire you and let you keep working. He fired Saul 17 years before David came. Let him work for 17 years. But I'd fired him 17 years before. Okay? So don't think that just because you are okay or things are okay, that everything is okay. Am I making sense? Okay? So that being said, when I got into ministry, I quickly found that because I was gifted, I got into the sound desk, which is extremely easy for me because I was a sound guy. From the sound place, I moved into the choir, and from the choir, I moved into the youth ministry. The second point I want you to know is this, is that where you start may not always be where you end in ministry. Okay? Are we together? Where you start may not always be where you end in ministry. Just because you started out as an usher does not mean that you will always be an usher. Because God has a tendency of testing faithfulness where you are to decide where you should go. Okay? God has a tendency of saying, I will start you somewhere just to see how you can handle that before I move you to the next place. But here's a secret that I want you to know. Wherever you are in ministry, do it like you're never going to move. Do you get what I mean? Huh? Okay. Who's changed jobs before? Who's moved like to different companies before? A few of us, right? Or a good number of us. How does it feel like when you've served notice? It's a waste of time, huh? When you serve notice at a place of work and they say, okay, no, 30 days, and you sit there for 30 days thinking, I can't wait to leave. Who's been there before? But guess what? So you are ineffective because you're always thinking of the next place. You know, I've seen that many people enter ministry like that. They've already seen themselves at some place. Some people have already seen themselves as pastors, even though they can be ushers. So they're just waiting for the day. The one thing I've realized about church is never think that because I'm the one with the microphone, that there's no one else in church who's not ready to preach. If I was to drop, somebody will pick up that microphone. Because somebody has been rehearsing without me knowing it. Somebody's ready. Somebody's always ready in the shadows. Do you know what I mean, right? David was walking by, minding his own business, but he was ready. But here's the thing I want you to know, is that wherever you are, serve the best you can in that place. Don't serve like you're going to another place. Do you get what I mean? Because you're wasting energy in that place. We're not utilizing you the best that we can in that place because you're thinking of the next place that you ought to be. Okay? So serve faithfully in every place that you are. The third thing that I want to leave you with is that one of the things I encountered in my ministry very quickly is the importance of submission. Okay? For me, ministry has not been about me. Okay? Every place of ministry that I found was a place that I saw a need to help in the ministry. Okay? Every place of ministry I found, that's very dangerous. The glass is very weak there. That's very dangerous. The chap just ate sugar. Yeah. So every place of ministry I found was a place that I saw that I could help. Am I making sense? So I submitted myself to my pastor. And when I got into the music, into media, the first place, was because I saw a need with media. Do you get what I'm saying? And because I saw a need with media, I then said, okay, that's what I can do. I can do the sound. I did what I could do. Okay? Somehow, by the grace of God, one time we're doing Days of Rain, just like you are doing, right? So we graduated from the Days of Rain class. And the Days of Rain class had a choir. So you guys are also singing on Sunday, right? So our choir as well was like, woo, was whack. Okay? So I was like, oh, I'm not sure you guys are whack, but then I was like, okay, I'll lead praise. And I only knew the songs that, remember, I was not born again for a long time, eh? But I remember the songs we used to sing, praise songs, you know what I mean? So I took praise, and I remember taking praise, and I remember leading praise, and my pastor peeped his head in during service, and I was like, who's that guy? And that's how I joined the choir that day. That day. Long and short of it, I became the choir leader or choir director a few years later, deputy director. with a colleague of mine, and once one Tuesday I was having a meeting with my pastor and my worship pastor, right? Talking about the choir, right? And he was talking about the youth, and he didn't like the way the youth was going at that time. So he starts whispering in front of me, and he's like, "Ish, I'm not liking the way things are moving in the youth." And I had seen the youth perform like on a Sunday, and they performed, and it was terrible. They did some rap, which was like horrendous, but churches, when they see young people, they just clap for them. Woo, woo. And they just did a weak rap, weak. So I said, no, this is weak. So I said to Pastor, Pastor, I think that I can help with the youth. And he just says, yes, you can. Then a week later, he calls me. He's like, so I'm going to make you youth director. I want you to take over from the youth. Bear in mind, I am the choir director. And he says, I want you to take over from the youth. So I said, no problem, Pastor. I can take over. It was only years later that he would tell me that the very day I walked into his office, the Lord had told him, this guy will lead your youth ministry. So he knew 3 years before I entered the youth ministry that I was supposed to be in youth. But he let me first enter the media, enter the choir, then enter the youth. So sometimes your way into ministry will be straight, but sometimes it will be zigzag. Sometimes your path to the promised land will be a 3-day journey, sometimes it will be a 40-year journey. You get what I'm saying? So don't compare yourself to anybody else. What you're going through in understanding your ministry is not what everybody needs, it's what you need. God will take you through the process that you need, not what everyone else. This is not God is not social welfare. You understand? You gave this one, but He'll give you what you need. Okay? So my admonition to every single one of you is simply this. Serve God. This is the greatest thing that you can do. Today you have to make a decision to say, I'm here to serve God fully and wholly.